Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Judas. First of all, this run does only go to Mom's Foot, but I'm not too disappointed. You know why? Because it's Booster Pack Day, and of course on every Booster Pack Day, we get to experience reliving the joy and hype of just getting some new items and content into Isaac. And in this one we got 4 new items and 1 new trinket, and of course some miscellaneous changes like Eden hairstyles. And now Mom's dressing table actually gets destroyed properly when you try to bomb it, or when you demolish it with any other means or items or whatever you might have. And of course all of those changes are maybe not that big on their own, but when you consider that there are 2 more booster packs, and probably at least 3 more booster packs to come, this is just speculation, not really hard data, so don't quote me on that, but I feel like there would be a little bit more booster packs coming out. And when you combine all of those changes and items, I really feel like they make the game a bit more wholesome and just give it a bit more content and a bit more life. I know that all of these things considered, when you actually think about them, they don't really make a lot of sense, because I remember in the booster pack 1 some new items got added and I felt like they really didn't have a place in the game. But now with more items and of course more changes, I feel like the game is becoming much better, and I think that Afterbirth Plus has suffered from that feeling of that it just wasn't polished enough when it was released, but I feel like it's getting there slowly. And with these booster packs I feel like they did get another chance of, first of course, memorizing and kind of immortalizing the community's creations in the game, but also having another chance or another shot to maybe balance some things out. And of course this iterative process of always putting out patches is something that a lot of games maybe try to do but not really do successfully. So I like that this has actually encompassed the changes that we see now, and that we actually get frequent updates, because even if there were no new items added, I still feel like some changes would be necessary. Of course, maybe for some bugs, those are pretty obvious, but also maybe for some things that were just unfair, or maybe some balance changes. Nothing feels worse when you have an item that just doesn't work properly with maybe a synergy of another item, and maybe in theory you feel like it should do something, but in reality what ends up happening is that they just don't do anything. And of course, little patches and changes like that I feel like greatly contribute to the game and just the overall feel. When you get a new combo of items and it happens to work properly and it's not just a broken mess of spaghetti code, then in that moment is when you know you're playing Isaac and not just some broken shell of what Isaac could be. But of course that is just my opinion and just my speculation. I'm just kind of rambling at this point. Let's focus on the run. Oh, I did mention there were 4 new items, and one of those items actually makes an appearance at this run. I actually get some fun synergies with it. I kind of intentionally went with the items that I felt like would synergize well just to show it off, and then I go in a mob trap room or a boss trap room, because we were in the womb, to show it off. And you'll hear the clicky clacking, so if that's a little bit of a hype teaser for what's to come in like 2 minutes, then you can consider it that way. But up until this point, you can say that this run wasn't really too good, but it also wasn't terrible. We got some of the good items, like Contagion is a pretty decent one. I'm not sure if the poison, when you kill an enemy which spreads to other enemies and poisons them, is affected by luck or not. Sometimes it just feels like it keeps going off. You maybe poison one enemy, it dies, it poisons another enemy, it just creates this chain reaction. But sometimes I feel like I kill 20 enemies and no enemies get poisoned at all. So it's kind of one of those things which I'm not really sure how it works, and I should probably read up on it. But in either case, it's a good item, especially for those enemies which split into more enemies and they explode in poison. They poison the spiders, and then spiders poison other spiders and just poison everywhere. And it's one of those things which I feel really helps with crowd control, but it's also useful in those single isolated cases where maybe you only have 2 enemies in the room and you manage to kill one and you don't really have to bother with the other one because Contagion spreads to them. Later on, we also got Lusty Blood, which is again one of my favorite items in the game. Not favorite, but one of the best items, just because it does give you damage for more enemies you kill, and it really does work well with those AoE items like Contagion, because as soon as you kill an enemy, not only does your damage increase and it's much easier to kill other enemies, but what also ends up happening is you get more damage and that it's easier to kill other enemies and they poison other enemies and just everything dies. And later on in the shop, I feel like that was the first crucial decision of the run, and probably the only one up until this point. Is we could have picked Mom's Key, and I'm not against Mom's Key. Mom's Key is an amazing item, especially when you combine it with something like Guppy's Tail or just a high luck stat. You get a ton of chests, you open them, you get a lot of consumables, but I felt like Mom's Key is just not gonna do it for this run. You saw me not having really a lot of ways to either go forward or break the game. So I felt like Momsky, while it's good, it wouldn't be really too useful in this situation because we only had like one floor remaining. So to kind of rely on it would be a bit foolish. I just kind of kept rerolling, and the next reroll was Sackboy. And Sackboy might seem not that good as well because, like I said, there are only 2 floors remaining. Obviously, it seems a bit better because you at least have the chance of getting runes. But there's one thing that nobody will tell you about. Well, I guess someone will, because I will tell you now. And that is the Temperance card and the Blank card, of course, produce the Blood Machines. And the Blood Machines have a chance to drop coins, and then those coins can get transferred into Sackboy, I mean just Sacks. And you might say, well, of course I knew that, doesn't every consumable have a chance to get transferred into a sack? And the answer to that is no. For example, if you're playing an Ivy bag and you try to spawn coins that way, those coins won't ever be sacks. But with Temperance cards and Blood Machines, those coins have a chance to be sacks. So you can see where this is going, because I'm doing boss rush, I'm spawning a lot of Blood Machines, I'm gonna play them, of course they're gonna give me more sacks, and then I'm gonna get more chances to actually get more Blood Machines. I'll be able to play those, and of course that way I'm gonna get a lot of money, I'm gonna get a lot of item pedestals, and eventually I just kind of get all of that together, find an AWOS rune, and get this combo. You see this? You see this? It's amazing. It's actually beautiful. And not only do we have one of the new items which makes the tears bounce off of each other, what's it called? Eye shot, something like that. Because they are eyes. And essentially what ends up happening, your tears don't have a lot of velocity anymore, but they just kind of float in the air. But the catch is that every time you shoot a new tear, it actually interacts with other tears and bounces them around. So if you have a lot of tear rate, and in this case you can see which items we have. We have fractured bones, and we have the cricket's body and things like that. So all of those items make your tears split into more items. And then of course with Technology Zero, what ends up happening is those tears actually get interconnected with lasers, and then those lasers deal damage as the tears are stationary. And if you shoot them fast enough, you can end up with a mess of just a bunch of tears bouncing around, just killing enemies instantly. So it's a really potent combo, and this item seems like such a joy to play as. I'm not sure if this actually interacts with items like Brimstone or Technology. I don't think it would, so for that reason I didn't pick them up, but I did essentially go through every single item that was in that item pool, and I picked up the items which I felt like would work well. So you can see me having on the right like 5 items which kind of make this a bit crazy, but obviously I expect there to be some more fun synergies, but I just wanted to show off this one. And of course, as I played the Blood Machines, a lot of pedestals were spawned. Then I used the sacks and the batteries that I got to use my Purchase rune, and of course because I had the Blank card, eventually I got an AWOS rune, and that was just my ticket to get out. I used the AWOS rune, the Blank card, I got to the next floor, and of course my plan is to go to Shoal, and also picked up the Wafer. And the only reason for that is if I encounter a Sacrifice room, I'll only take half of the damage that I would usually take, which of course means half the damage penalty, which is something like 3,000 points. So the Wafer is always a good investment if you actually can get it early on in the run. One thing I also wanted to do is to get something like a starter deck, because that would allow me to hold 2 cards in hand, and one would allow me to teleport back and explore the entirety of the Mom floor, and the other one would allow me to hold the AWOS rune. Of course, the AWOS rune would allow me to go forward. I didn't miss out on something like 2000 exploration bonus and probably something like a boss trap room, mob trap room, because I was rushing and because I didn't explore that floor and I thought I could teleport out of it. But obviously the AWOS rune and just going to Shoal is a much better prospect, especially because later on we'll also get the rune back and the Yara rune. Of course, you can see where this is going. I used the Yara rune, the Blank card, to break the game, get a bunch of keys, and my end score is 44,018 points. So just a little bit more. And we end up finishing in a 9th spot, which is only a single digit, so that's always decent. Our strike bonus is high, exploration bonus is low. Our damage penalty is actually pretty low. I thought it would be higher, but I felt like we did play well, and especially later on with the Holy Mantle and just such a crazy combo. Of course, we can't really stand a chance to get hit. I think another thing to mention or note here is 39:39, which is our time, which is not spectacular at all, but just find it interesting that it's symmetrical and kind of the same number in both the minute mark and the second mark. But besides that, a very enjoyable run. Booster Pack 3 is here. I feel like we hit it off on the right foot. Of course, that foot was a pun, which was unintentional, but I also tried to say that because it's a monthly daily, of course you can expect there to be a lot of variance, and since this was a bit of a more forced combo, I feel like it would be a good idea to show it off. But of course you probably had a different experience, and a lot of people said it was a terrible run, and I feel bad for those people because you saw just what the potential of this one was. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope we'll see you next time.